Candidates on both sides of the political aisle scramble to decide how they will deal with a Supreme Court call on President Obama's immigration executive action. The conservative radio voice taking his own hammer to the leading GOP candidate, and a candidate playing the man card. Grist for the mill as we dive into this edition of The Political Animal. Southpaw Side, the senior political contributor at Forbes, who admits on his Facebook page that, yes, he did attend high school with Abe Lincoln, thus making him the wisest sage that he is. Rick Ungar, you didn't think I looked, right and ready to fight, former head of FEMA, afternoon talker on 630 KHOW in Denver, Colorado, who will painfully have to admit we may indeed see the final act for Peyton Manning this weekend when my Patriots defeat the Ponies. Michael Brown. Yeah, there you go. Let's start a little fighting right out here, gentlemen. All right, here we go. The Supreme Court deciding today whether or not the president has the authority to declare that millions of illegal immigrants be allowed to remain and work in the United States without fear of deportation. Here we go, Michael Brown. This is what people have been waiting for. But how much of an impact? They're not going to decide this until well into the whole election cycle here. So how much of a fighting impact do you think this is going to make from the candidates on both sides?
Zero. How about that? Zero. Look, there's no way to determine what the court's going to do. They've just had the arguments. Look, I learned a long time in my law practice, never predict what a judge or a court is going to do. All we can hope for here, and I mean this regardless of what side you're on, all I can hope for is that the court actually reads the law and then looks at his actions and see whether or not the law allows him to do what he's doing. And if it does, fine. If it doesn't, then rule against him. You know what? That's all I ask for is just a reading of the law and then applying the facts to the law. Wow, wouldn't that be a change for this court?
It would seem to be a rather interesting idea if indeed it did come true. So, Rick, let me throw it to you then, because let's face it, immigration is one of, if not the biggest issue that we're facing here heading up towards November. So regardless of what happens here, does anybody win on either side when it comes to making this even more of a campaign issue now?
Well, first, let me say, I don't know how Brownie ended up on the other side. He's so rational and reasonable. He should be with us. I don't get it. I really don't. That aside, yeah, somebody does win or lose, and that's all those dreamers out there that are hoping they're going to get to stay. I actually am very pleased the court took it. I'm not surprised that they took it. There is a fundamental issue here, and that is whether or not the president, through his executive power, has the right, as I believe the Constitution says, he has the right to make these kinds of enforcement decisions when it comes to immigration, not the states. We know it's the federal government, not the states, and the states are the ones who brought the lawsuit. But the president has the prosecutorial authority to decide. His whole purpose in this is, look, we know we can't get everybody out, so we're going to start with the ones that make the most sense, and why keep the others dangling?
Oh, Abe Lincoln would be so proud of you right now, Rick. All right, speaking of presidents who may use executive action down the road, let's get right to it. Rush Limbaugh on Monday, a little bit of a bomb this hit, said that Donald Trump is making a strategic mistake. He called out Trump, said he's making a big mistake in the way he's going after Senator Ted Cruz. Here's what he said.
And I will tell you that, like I've said before, I think Trump is making a strategic error in the way he criticizes Cruz. But, folks, it's unrealistic to expect that they're not going to go after each other. They're number 1 and 2. Iowa and New Hampshire are at stake. This is politics. There's only one winner.
Limbaugh says that the billionaire's use, Trump that is, of liberal language attacks should be a quote-unquote red flag to conservatives. What do you think, Mike?
Well, I think it should be. This whole kerfuffle over New York values, I think, actually has some deeper meaning to it. With all due respect to my buddy Rick, look, when you live in a borough where the average cost of an apartment, a decent apartment is $1 million, folks out here in Colorado look at that and say, that is a little strange. When you think about a city that actually wants to regulate, how big of a soda you can buy. And so when you compare those values, I think, look, Boulder, Colorado has different values than Douglas County, Colorado. Austin has its own values. Seattle has its own values. And I think the other point that we need to learn is Limbaugh's right in this regard. As this race begins to narrow down and we get down to 4, 3, and 2 candidates, of course they're going to go after each other. That's the process, and I'm glad to see it finally whittling down like that.
Well, here we have something else. If you look at it, Rick, you've not only got Rush going after Trump now, but Mark Levin told Trump to, quote unquote, cut the crap or risk losing conservative voters. Is it possible? You've got two very influential right-wing talk show hosts who have a huge audience. Do you think that Trump did indeed make that mistake, and these two guys can help turn it against him?
I don't think so. I mean, certainly Mark Levin has been a Cruz supporter since the start. I'm not sure about Rush. I think he's kind of gone for both of them. But you know what? In an ordinary year, I probably agree with both of them, but it's not an ordinary year. Look, Trump went after Cruz on this citizenship thing, which I think is nonsense. I think Ted Cruz is allowed to run, and I'm not the world's biggest Cruz fan, to be sure, but it seemed to have worked. You saw a dent in Cruz's polls when Trump put that idea in people's heads. I don't know what it is, but Trump just seems to have a line that is working so well. I don't even think he can be stopped, let alone put in trouble.
All right, here we go. 20 seconds, all I got left. Quick answer from both of you. Marco Rubio now playing a little bit of the man card. They called him out on his shoes a few weeks ago. Now he's talking football and guns. Okay, Rick, good idea?
I don't think anybody cares.
Wait a minute, America cares about this. Mike, does no one care? Is that just it?
No, nobody cares. Ed, please, move on. Nobody cares.
Thank God somebody else said it. And by the way, we'll move on. Patriots over the Broncos. It's okay, Mike.
No.
Don't worry about it. We'll get to talk about it next week. I love both teams,
All
lived
right.
in both cities, but I'm going to have to take the Patriots. Ungar, you're out of it for right now. Mike Brown,
Well,
Rick
yeah,
Ungar.
and I hate the Patriots, and I think they're going to win, too.
Oh, good man. All right. The left says something else intelligent. Nice job indeed. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you next week. Stay with us. The Hardline continues.